The sky that evening looked heavy, swollen with rain, as if the heavens themselves were holding back tears that were not yet ready to fall. I was sitting quietly by the window, sipping the last of my tea, when the sound of a car stopping outside broke the silence. I wasn't expecting anyone. It had been 3 long months since the last time I heard my son's voice, 3 months since I'd stood on this same porch watching him drive away with his wife, their eyes full of pride and their hearts full of arrogance. But when I opened the door that night, I saw them again, and the world seemed to freeze in place. There they were, my son and his wife, standing in the pouring rain, clutching their suitcases like survivors from a storm that had swallowed everything. Their clothes, once luxurious, were now soaked and wrinkled. Their faces, once proud, were pale and hollow. And their eyes looked nothing like the ones that had left me behind months ago. They were the eyes of people who had seen the world turn its back on them. "Mom!" my son whispered, his voice trembling. "Please, can we come in?" The words echoed in the doorway like a ghost returning to the living. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at them, really looked at them, and in that moment I realized how much had changed. Not just in them, but in me. Because the woman they had left behind, the one they called weak, pathetic, washed up, was gone. She had died the day they drove away in that shiny car, laughing at the life they thought they had outgrown. The woman standing there now wasn't broken. She was reborn. The driver, a young man named Tony, shifted awkwardly, glancing between us. Even he could feel the weight in the air. "Ma'am," he said softly, "should I take their bags inside?" I shook my head. My hand tightened on the doorframe. The rain splashed at their feet, darkening the concrete like spilled ink. My son swallowed hard. His wife, once all high heels and perfume, stood shivering, her expensive makeup streaked down her face. For the first time, she couldn't meet my eyes. Funny, isn't it? Life always finds a way to bring people back to the same door they once slammed shut. I wanted to say something comforting, something motherly, but the memory of that day they left still burned like fire. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old woman." Those were her last words to me. The neighbors had heard them too, Mrs. Jenkins from across the street, old Frank from next door, all standing in their yards as my humiliation echoed through the neighborhood. And now, the same neighbors were peeking through their curtains again, sensing a story was unfolding. The difference was, this time I wasn't the one being humiliated. I stepped out onto the porch. The rain hit my shoulders, cold but cleansing. My son's lips trembled. "Mom, please, we made a mistake. Things didn't go the way we thought." "Didn't go the way you thought," I repeated slowly. "You mean the mansion wasn't as golden as it looked? Or the woman who promised you the world decided to collect her payment in pain?" He opened his mouth but said nothing. His wife wiped her face with a shaking hand. "We just need a place to stay. Just for tonight," she whispered. I looked at the suitcases, the same ones they had packed when they left me, only now they were battered and dirty. The irony almost made me laugh. Pride had a way of destroying the very people it once lifted. Tony shifted again. "Ma'am, it's cold. They're soaked. You want me to take them somewhere else?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted them to feel that silence, the same silence I had lived with for months. The silence of unanswered calls, unreturned messages, birthdays forgotten, and prayers whispered into empty rooms. Finally, I said softly, "You both look tired." My son's eyes filled with tears. "We are," he said. "Please, Mom." I nodded slowly, but not the way he expected. "You know, when you left, I thought I would die here alone. But I didn't. These months taught me something you'll never learn in a mansion, that peace doesn't live in money or marble floors. It lives right here." I touched my chest. Inside. The rain grew louder. Thunder cracked in the distance. Tony's engine hummed softly in the background. I could feel every heartbeat in that silence. Candace, yes, I still remembered her name, finally lifted her face. Eleanor, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please. I'm sorry for what I said. I was stupid. I wanted to believe her, but pain doesn't vanish with a single apology. You'll have to forgive me, I said calmly. I'm not used to guests who only knock when they have nowhere else to go. Her face crumpled. Devin, my son, stepped forward. Mom, please. We lost everything. The mansion, the jobs. Vivian threw us out. We don't even have money for a motel. For a moment, my heart almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered. 3 months of silence. 3 months of being invisible to the very person I gave my life for. And that's when it hit me. This was the test I didn't see coming. Not from them, but from life itself. Was I strong enough to choose my dignity over my guilt? I took a slow breath and stepped back into the doorway. You want to come in, I said quietly. But what if I told you that walking away from me was the best thing you ever did, because it taught me to stand without you? Devin blinked, confused. Mom, what do you mean? I looked him straight in the eyes. I mean that the woman you left behind is gone, and what happens tonight will prove it, to you, to her. I nodded toward his wife, and to every person watching from their window thinking I'll crumble again. The thunder rolled again, deeper this time. Tony's headlights flickered against the rain. My son's voice cracked. Please, just for one night. I smiled faintly, but it wasn't kindness. It was power. You'll know my answer soon enough, I said. And I closed the door halfway, leaving their silhouettes framed in the stormlight. 2 broken souls waiting for mercy from the woman they once destroyed. What happened next? No one in this neighborhood will ever forget. But before I tell you what I did that night, you need to understand the story behind that door, the story of how I lost everything, and how losing everything became the best thing that ever happened to me. Before that stormy night, before the begging and the tears, my life was quiet, simple, maybe even dull to anyone looking in from the outside. But it was mine. I lived in a modest 2-story house on the edge of town, where the streetlights flickered and the neighbors always greeted each other by name. Every corner of that home carried a memory. My late husband's old hammer still hanging in the shed, the dent in the kitchen counter where Devin, my son, had once dropped his school lunchbox, the tiny pencil marks on the doorway that measured his height year after year. It wasn't fancy, but it was filled with the kind of warmth no mansion could ever buy. I raised Devin alone after his father's accident. I was 29, broke, and terrified. But when you have a child looking up at you, calling you mama through tears, fear quickly turns into purpose. I worked 2 jobs, days in an accounting office and nights cleaning small clinics, and somehow kept a roof over our heads. Every dollar I earned smelled like sweat and coffee, but it bought books, shoes, and a little boy's smile. That was all I ever needed. Devin grew up to be everything his father dreamed of, kind, smart, hardworking. He got a scholarship, graduated as an engineer, and landed a promising job downtown. When he called me after getting hired, I remember how proud I felt hearing him say, "Mom, we finally made it." We. That single word was my reward for every sleepless night I had spent balancing bills on the kitchen table. Then he met her. Her name was Candace, though she insisted everyone call her Candy, as if sweetness could hide the bitterness behind her eyes. She came from a different world, the kind where dinner was served by waiters and the napkins smelled like perfume. When Devin introduced us, I tried to be polite, wearing my best dress and cooking my best meal. But from the moment she stepped into my house, I could feel the invisible wall between us. Her gaze slid over my furniture, my curtains, my shoes, and I could almost hear the judgment forming in her mind. That night, after dinner, Devin told me she liked me. But the next morning, when I went to wash the dishes, I found a note under her coffee cup, a receipt from an expensive restaurant scribbled with the words, "We'll have real food next time." It wasn't meant for me to see, but fate has its ways. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. She was young, ambitious, used to a different lifestyle. I convinced myself she would soften once she understood our family, our values. But ambition doesn't soften, it consumes. 6 months later, they got married. A small ceremony, my idea, because Devin said he didn't want me to take a loan. I cooked the food with my own hands, collard greens, mac and cheese, and my husband's old barbecue recipe. Everyone smiled politely, except Candy. She complained the plates didn't match and the house smelled of old furniture. Her mother, a woman named Vivian, didn't even attend. She was busy in Europe, though she managed to send a silver-plated serving tray that probably cost more than the whole wedding. I still keep it, untouched, as a reminder of how some gifts are really insults wrapped in ribbon. After the wedding, they moved in with me, just for a few months, Devin said, until they saved for their own place. I was thrilled. The house finally felt alive again. I fixed the upstairs room with clean curtains and white sheets. I even placed fresh flowers on the dresser. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could be a family again. But the first cracks appeared within days. Candy wrinkled her nose at the smell of my home-cooked meals. She called my living room vintage, though her tone made it sound like trash. She spent her evenings scrolling through luxury catalogs and sighing loudly, as if each sigh were meant to remind me of how far beneath her world I lived. At first, Devin laughed it off. "She's not used to this, Mom. Give her time," he'd say. And I did, because that's what mothers do. We give time, patience, and love even when it drains every bit of strength we have left. Weeks turned into months. The laughter in our house disappeared. Meals became silent battles fought with forks and glances. Candy stopped eating my cooking altogether, preferring to order takeout from restaurants I couldn't even pronounce. She left the empty boxes on the counter for me to clean up, a small reminder of who she thought she was, and who she thought I wasn't. Then came the day Vivian arrived. She didn't knock, she arrived, like a queen inspecting her subjects. Her car gleamed like silver, and her heels clicked across my floor as if every step cost money. She smiled when she saw me, a cold, tight smile that never reached her eyes. "My, how quaint," she said, looking around. "You've done quite well with so little, Eleanor." Her words were sugar-coated poison. I stayed quiet. I didn't want to embarrass Devin, but inside, something in me trembled. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. I had met women like her before, the kind who look down at others not because they're truly happy, but because it's the only way they can feel tall. After that visit, everything changed. Vivian started inviting Devin and Candy to her estate every weekend. Parties, dinners, business meetings. And every Monday morning, I could see how Candy's contempt for my house grew. She began comparing my simple curtains to Vivian's chandeliers, my garden to her fountains. The poison that woman poured into their heads was slow but deadly. One evening, after one of those visits, Devin came home quieter than usual. I was in the kitchen folding laundry when he finally said it, softly, almost apologetically. "Mom, Vivian offered us to stay at her place for a while, just until we get back on our feet." My hands froze mid-fold. I turned to him, searching his face for hesitation. There was none. "You already said yes, didn't you?" He didn't answer, but the guilt in his eyes said everything. A week later, the truck came. Candy supervised the move like a general leading a parade. She took every piece of furniture I had ever gifted them, even the clock that used to hang in Devin's childhood room. She didn't thank me once. And then came those words, the ones that would echo in my head for months. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old woman." The neighbors heard it. They came outside. Some looked away in pity. Others just whispered. Devin didn't say a word. He got into the car, eyes fixed on the road ahead, pretending he didn't hear a thing. Vivian honked twice, as if calling for servants, and they drove off. I stood there on the porch alone, holding the last photo of us together. The street lights flickered. The night smelled like rain. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. Not because they left, but because I realized they hadn't just left my house. They had left my heart. I went inside, closed the door, and sat in the same chair where my husband used to read the paper. For the first time in years, the house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat and wonder if it's worth continuing. But I did continue, because grief may break you, but it also teaches you what you're truly made of. I didn't know it then, but that moment, that lonely night when my world fell apart, was the very night my rebirth began. The night they left, silence became my only company. I sat on that old sofa, the one she called filthy, and listened to the echo of their laughter still clinging to the walls. For the first time in my life, my house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a witness to betrayal. Every corner whispered their words back to me, wrought in that dusty old house. Days passed like ghosts. I woke up, made breakfast for no one, and stared at the empty chair where my son used to sit. The phone never rang. No texts, no calls. As if I had been erased. But neighbors remember everything. They watched me water my garden and whispered, "Poor woman, her son chose money over love." At first, I cried long, painful nights of crying until the tears stopped coming. Then came the anger. Not wild anger, but the quiet kind that burns deep, the kind that makes you see everything clearly. One morning I looked around and realized they were right about one thing. The house was old. The paint was fading, the furniture tired. Not because I was poor, but because I had spent my entire life giving, never keeping anything for myself. That realization hit me harder than their betrayal. I had poured every drop of strength into raising my son, and left nothing for me. So, I decided to change that. I took out my savings, not much, just enough for a few repairs, and went to the hardware store. The young clerk looked surprised when I told him I'd be painting the house myself. "You sure you don't want to hire help, ma'am?" he asked. I smiled. "No. I need to do this with my own hands." That week, I started painting. The first brushstroke shook, but the second was steady. With every layer of color, I felt something inside me heal. The walls that once held my humiliation began to glow again, fresh, clean, and mine. I worked for hours until my arms ached, but I didn't stop. The pain reminded me I was still alive. As the days passed, something beautiful happened. The house started to change, and so did I. I no longer waited for the phone to ring. I stopped glancing at the road hoping to see their car. Instead, I played old music while painting, sang to myself, and let the sunlight fill the rooms. Then, one afternoon, the phone finally rang. For a second, my heart leapt, but it wasn't my son. It was Jasmine, an old friend from the office. She had heard what happened and wanted to see me. When we met at a small cafe, she listened quietly as I told her everything. The insults, the silence, the day they drove away. When I finished, she reached across the table and held my hand. "Eleanor," she said softly, "you've been strong all your life. But strength doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. You have rights, dignity, and a heart that still matters. Don't ever forget that." Her words stayed with me. That night, when I returned home, I looked at my reflection in the window, paint on my hands, tired eyes, and whispered, "I matter." It was the first time I had said it aloud in years. That moment marked the start of something new. I didn't know it yet, but the same people who left me to rot in this dusty old house would soon come crawling back, and when they did, they'd find a woman they no longer recognized. Morning light used to hurt my eyes. It reminded me that another day had arrived, another day I'd face an empty house, another day without a call, another day pretending I wasn't waiting for something that would never come. But then one morning, something shifted. Instead of sadness, I felt a strange calmness, like the silence had stopped haunting me and started healing me. I stood in front of my freshly painted walls, the color still new and bright. For the first time, I saw beauty in my own hands. The same hands that once trembled from exhaustion now held the power to rebuild. The house no longer looked like a tomb of memories. It looked alive. Little by little, I started fixing everything. I repaired the leaking tap that had annoyed me for years. I replaced the faded curtains. I planted flowers in the garden, the same garden Candace used to call a pile of dirt. The first morning a butterfly landed on those flowers, I smiled, because it felt like life was returning, quietly, stubbornly, to the woman everyone thought was finished. Then Jasmine called again. She had been checking on me ever since our cafe talk. "Eleanor," she said, "you sound different. Lighter." "I feel different," I told her. "I'm painting my life back into color." She laughed softly. "Good. Because one day, they'll realize what they threw away, and when they do, you'll be ready." Her words became a quiet echo in my mind. I didn't know how right she would be. Weeks passed. My body ached from the repairs, but my spirit felt stronger. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, every flower I planted became a silent declaration. I am still here. Then, one afternoon, as I was cleaning the garden, my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. For a moment, I froze. My instincts whispered that this call wasn't random. It was the past returning. I answered. "Mom." It was Devin, my son. His voice cracked like glass. "Mom, I need your help." My heart leapt before my mind could react. "Devin, are you all right?" He hesitated. I need to borrow some money. $5,000. It's urgent. Please, Mom." My breath caught. After 3 months of silence, after all the humiliation and pain, this was the first thing he said to me. "No, how are you? No, I miss you. Just a demand. What do you need it for?" I asked quietly. He stumbled over his words. "Just things. Bills. You wouldn't understand." I felt my chest tighten. I had exactly $5,200 left in my account. My safety, my peace. And now, the same child who abandoned me wanted to take that too. "Devin," I said, my voice steady, "you live in a mansion. You have everything you ever wanted. Why come to me?" Silence. Then he snapped, "You're always like this, playing the victim." "Forget it." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, trembling, but not with pain, with clarity. For the first time, I saw my son as a man shaped not by my love, but by his greed. And I realized something Jasmine once told me: strength isn't about how much you can endure, it's about knowing when to stop being used. That night, I didn't cry. I simply whispered to the empty house, "No more." I didn't know it then, but that no would echo through everything that came next. Because soon, life was about to bring them back to my doorstep, and this time, I wouldn't be the one left standing in the rain. It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind that carries too much silence. I had just finished watering the flowers when I heard a car stop outside my gate. At first I thought it was a delivery, but when I looked through the window, I saw them, Devin and Candace, standing in the rain with their suitcases. The same suitcases they had taken with them when they left. My heart stopped. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. But then I saw their faces, drawn, pale, and tired. The arrogance that once burned in their eyes was gone, replaced by something I never expected to see again: shame. "Mom," Devin said, his voice breaking. "Please, can we talk?" The rain soaked their clothes. Candace's mascara streaked down her cheeks. I didn't move. I just stood at the door, remembering every cruel word, every night of silence, every tear I had cried into my pillow. I remembered the way she had shouted, "Rot in that dusty old house," and how he, my son, had said nothing to defend me. Now here they were, begging to come back into the same house they once called worthless. Behind them, the driver looked at me, unsure whether to leave or wait. I could see the confusion in his eyes. He was witnessing something he didn't understand. But I understood. This wasn't an apology. This was desperation. "Please, Mom," Devin said again. "We made a mistake. Things didn't go the way we thought." I stepped closer, enough for the rain to hit my face. "Didn't go the way you thought?" I said softly. "Or didn't go the way she promised?" Candace lowered her head. Her voice trembled. "Vivian threw us out. She took our money, our cards, everything. We have nowhere to go." For a moment, I just looked at them. The same people who had left in luxury now stood begging under the storm. Life truly had a way of humbling the proud. I could hear the whispers of my neighbors through their half-open windows, the same neighbors who had seen me humiliated months ago. I knew they were watching again, waiting to see if I would forgive, if I would open the door. Devin's voice cracked. "Please, just for tonight. We'll find somewhere tomorrow. I promise." The word promise felt bitter. Promises from him had become lies dressed as kindness. "You promised before," I said quietly. "When you moved out. When you said you'd call. When you said you'd visit. 3 months. Devin. Not one message. Not one word." He looked down. The rain beat harder. Candace shivered. "Eleanor," she whispered, "I know I hurt you. I was wrong. Please don't leave us outside." I felt something twist in my chest. Part of me wanted to reach out, to pull them in, wrap them in a blanket, and forget everything. But the stronger part of me, the one that had rebuilt walls and painted over pain, knew better. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "But this door doesn't open to people who only remember me when the world forgets them." Their faces went pale. Devin reached out as if to stop me. "Mom, please, don't do this." I took a breath. "The kind that tastes like freedom." "You did this," I said. "You both did. And now, you'll have to face what that means." And with that, I closed the door, not in anger, but in peace. Behind it, the rain continued to fall, washing away the last of my weakness. For the first time, I felt the power of saying no. The morning after that storm, the neighborhood buzzed. People who once pitied me now greeted me with quiet respect. Word spread faster than rainwater that I had closed the door on my son and his wife. Some called it harsh. Others called it strength. But I didn't care what anyone called it. For the first time in years, I felt peace. I spent that morning sweeping the porch. The air was cool and clean, like the world itself had been washed. Every brush of the broom reminded me that my home was no longer a place of shame, it was my sanctuary. The walls that had once echoed with hurt now stood strong, reflecting a woman who had finally learned her worth. A few days later, Jasmine visited. She sat in my kitchen sipping tea and said, "Eleanor, the whole neighborhood is talking about you." I smiled. Let them. For once, they're talking about my strength, not my sadness. She laughed softly. "You did what most mothers never could." That night, I looked through the window. Across the street, the old Jenkins couple waved and smiled. For the first time, I realized something simple. Respect doesn't come from money or status. It comes from standing your ground. Then, one afternoon, the news reached me through the same neighbors who had once whispered behind my back. Vivian, the woman who had poisoned my son's mind, had lost everything. The authorities were investigating her for financial fraud. Her mansion was up for sale. Her name, once spoken with admiration, had become a warning. And as for Devin and Candace, they were seen around town, staying in a small rental apartment near the outskirts. The woman who once laughed at my old furniture now washed her own dishes in a shared kitchen. People said they had started looking for small jobs, but no one wanted to hire them. Vivian's scandal had tainted everything she touched. I didn't celebrate their fall. I didn't feel revenge. Just closure. Life had delivered its lesson without me lifting a finger. Weeks passed. My garden bloomed brighter than ever. The air inside my house felt lighter. I started volunteering at a local community center, teaching women how to manage finances and rebuild their confidence. Many of them were like me, mothers who had given everything and been left with nothing. Helping them reminded me that pain, when shared with purpose, becomes power. One evening, as I was leaving the center, I saw Devon across the street. He looked thinner, older, humbled. He noticed me too, hesitated, then lowered his gaze. For a brief second, I wanted to walk over and hold him. But I didn't. Some distances aren't meant to be closed in a single step. I went home quietly that night. The wind was calm, the house glowing warm under the porch light. And as I locked the door, I whispered to myself, "This peace, I earned it." Little did I know, my story wasn't over yet. Because soon, I would receive something that would test my heart one last time, a letter that would change everything I thought I knew about forgiveness. It was still dawn when I found the envelope. The world outside was gray and silent, even the birds hadn't started singing. It lay there on my porch, damp from the dew, the handwriting trembling across its surface like a heartbeat trapped in ink. I didn't need to check the name. I already knew who it was from. I took it inside, sat by the window where I used to wait for his calls, and turned the letter over in my hands. My heart thudded slowly, as if afraid to believe what it wanted to hear. I opened it carefully, the paper crackling in the quiet. "Mom, I know I've hurt you more than anyone else ever could. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I finally understand. Vivian's mansion is gone. Her empire collapsed. We lost everything. Money, pride, comfort, but the worst thing I lost was you. When we stood at your door that night and you didn't let us in, I thought you were cruel. Now I realize, you were teaching me strength. You wanted me to learn what I never understood. That respect can't be begged for, it's earned. Candace and I have started over. Small jobs, cheap rent, quiet nights. And you know what? For the first time, we sleep in peace. Every time we eat simple food on a plastic plate, she looks at me and says, "Your mom was right." And she was. Mom, thank you for standing tall when I didn't. You didn't close the door to punish me. You did it to wake me up. If you ever decide to forgive us, know that we're ready to rebuild. Not with your money, but with your lessons. I love you, Mom. Always did. I was just too blind to see it. The words blurred as my eyes filled. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I pressed the letter to my chest and whispered, "I waited years to hear that." The sun rose slowly through the window, spilling gold light across my floorboards, the same ones that once echoed my loneliness. I realized then that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a gift you give yourself when you're ready to stop bleeding. I walked outside and sat in my garden. The flowers I planted after their departure were in full bloom, reds, yellows, violets, a riot of color against the morning sky. Life had come back in ways I never expected. A butterfly fluttered past and landed gently on my hand. I smiled. It felt like a sign. "Maybe someday," I whispered, looking toward the road. "But not today. Today belongs to peace." I went back inside and placed the letter in my drawer, not to hide it, but to keep it safe. It wasn't just a letter, it was proof that life can change, that hearts can learn, that pain can evolve into wisdom. I looked into the camera of my old phone, something I hadn't done in months, and recorded a message for those who had followed my story, for those who had felt broken and forgotten just like me. If you're watching this and you've ever been left behind, I want you to remember one thing. You are not the ending someone else chose for you. You are the author of what happens next. Forgive when you're ready, not when you're pressured. Stand tall, rebuild, and live the life that proves you survived. I smiled, wiped a tear, and whispered the words that ended my story, the same words that started my new life. Sometimes, saying no is the loudest way to say, "I love you." And as the video faded to black, the last caption appeared. Speech balloon, if this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments what lesson it left you with. Red heart, hit like if you believe strength begins with self-respect. Bell subscribe for more true-to-life stories that remind us that love, when tested, doesn't end, it evolves.